Hey there, Alex Kidman, and today I'm taking a look at the Motorola Moto G14. So, here in Australia, Motorola's core offerings have long been in the affordable value space, and look, the G14, to cut to the chase, is another one of those. It's quite a decent value phone too. I like it quite a lot at the price point it's at. So locally, this will run you $229 outright, and that puts it in an interesting position. The E13 is a bit cheaper, the G53 5G is a bit more expensive, and so it's got to sit wedged between those two phones while still providing decent value for money, which it mostly does. Let's get into why that is. Let's first of all look at the design. So straight off the bat, the G14 certainly doesn't look like a cheap phone. Here in Australia, it's only available in just two colour tones. Motorola certainly makes this phone in other colour tones. There's the standard steel grey, which is exactly what you'd think it is. And then there's this one, which is the pale lilac. And as the name suggests, the back is a light purple hue. Let's have a look. There it is. But what you might not expect with pale lilac is that it comes with a slightly different case backing, because steel grey is just plastic, but pale lilac is vegan leather. Now, vegan leather is not leather, it's plastic. I mean, it's this kind of soft touch plastic, and it's absolutely a choice that some people will like and some people really won't like, because it's got this kind of odd softness to it. I've got to be honest, I'm not a fan. I don't like the touch of vegan leather. That's me, and it's totally 100% a sensory thing, but the key takeaway here for you is this is probably one of those phones that's worth getting hands-on with if you don't like phone cases. The good news here, as you can see, is that it actually comes with a case. And look, this is honestly how I've had this thing the entire time I've tested it, because I don't like the touch of that vegan leather. Your tastes 100% can vary, and that's totally fine. Jumping back around to the front, the G14 is built around a 6.5-inch Full HD+, so 2400 by 1080 LCD display with a 29 aspect ratio. Fairly standard stuff. What you don't see on this phone that you do see on a bunch of other Motorola phones is any high refresh rate support. If you want that, you have to spend a little bit more. It's one of the compromises you've got to put up with this particular model. But look, the screen is fine. It works well enough. It's bright enough. I've enjoyed it while I've been testing it. On the controls front, you get volume control and power button at the side. The power button also does double duty as a biometric fingerprint reader. Nice to see. At the base, you've got USB-C for charging. And at the top, if we spin it around, you've got a standard headphone jack. Look, this is all fairly standard stuff. Nothing wrong with it. All works pretty well. Motorola doesn't state a water resistance for the G14. They simply state that it has a water repellent design, but there's no further detail on that. And look, honestly, I'm not aware of any phones that advertise they have water attracting designs, Motorola. It'd be nice to know exactly what you mean by that, because, well, a water attracting design is a sponge, basically. But the takeaway from that is it'd be a good idea to keep this generally away from water. I mean, I think a little bit of light rain's probably not going to hurt it, in the same way that it's not likely to hurt any phone, but don't go dunking in the bath, people. The Moto G14 has dual rear lenses, a 50 megapixel f1.8 primary and then a 2 megapixel macro, while around the front at the hole punch you get a front facing 8 megapixel selfie camera. And look, this is all pretty standard stuff at this kind of price point. I can't really help but feel as though I've been here before, because Motorola's budget phone cameras all tend to shoot to a point, and that point is very much generally acceptable. Generally acceptable is fine at $229. You can't really expect high-end camera photography. And again, I've said that before many times in budget phone reviews. I'll throw up some examples here, because basically this can shoot well in good conditions, not so well in other conditions. The video is fine. It's perfectly serviceable without being noticeably fast or great. It'll get the job done in almost in that classic box brownie way, I suppose. But if you're expecting anything superlative, you're not going to find it here. I'm yet to find that Motorola budget phone that has a really exciting camera. This certainly isn't it, but you don't have to be exciting to be decent, and this is at least decent. On the performance side, the Moto G14, like a lot of budget phones right now, runs on a Unisoc processor. In this case, it's the Unisoc T616. It's matched up with 4GB of RAM and 128GB of inbuilt storage, at least for the Australian model. International variants may be different, I don't know. But you can add micro SD storage to that if you like. And look, at $229, that's pretty much to be expected, and its performance is pretty much to be expected as well. I've got full benchmark results on my website. Link is in the description below, so click on that if you want to go crazy with the benchmarks. But essentially speaking, this is, within the Motorola family, for example, more powerful than the E13, not as powerful as the G53 5G, and that's totally commensurate with its price points. That 4GB of RAM did give me pause for thought. Look, you can run a reasonable quantity of things. You can run light games on it fine, and even heavier duty ones are okay as long as you don't mind load times. But it would have been nice to see a little bit more, because in 2023, 4GB is very much the floor of what I want to see out of a phone in performance terms. The Moto G14 runs on Android 13, and annoyingly here, Motorola is only committing to the 1 year of updates. Basically, this is going to get Android 14, and Android 14 is this year's Android, so it's not even necessarily going to see next year's Android update. And look, that is a little bit disappointing. Yes, this is a budget phone. Yes, other competitors actually do less than this, but that doesn't mean Motorola shouldn't do more, and some are doing more. On that note, I'm reviewing this in September 2023, and it's running the July 2023 Android security updates, which is not awful, could be better, could be worse, I suppose. Motorola's general approach to Android has always really only been for small tweaks to the UI. So if you're used to Android, then this is fine. You'll get on with it just fine. I mean, you do get things like, for example, a quick shake will fire up the flashlight, as you can see there. And then it won't switch it off till I tell it to. And twisting will bring forward the camera, for example. But beyond that, it's Android. You can do with it as you like. I approve of that kind of thing, and it kind of makes sense given the slightly lower spec and lower RAM on this device, not to push it too hard. On the battery front, we're talking a 5,000 mAh battery. Very much on the trend for phones right now in the Android space across the board, really. I mean, some budget phones that I've tested recently have had slightly lower battery capacities, but mostly 5,000 is kind of what you expect. It's what you do with that 5,000 though that matters, and Motorola's got a reasonable track record for having decent battery endurance, so I was keen to see what the G14 could do. And here I came away just a little bit disappointed. So running it through my standard YouTube 1 hour battery test, where I take a phone with a full battery, full brightness, moderate volume, and stream a YouTube video for an hour over it, I came away with 90% battery remaining after that hour. Now, what I typically find with that test is phones that can do 90% or better can typically last for a moderate day of usage. So, look, it leapt that hurdle, but only just. Comparatively, the E13 did 94%. So did the G53 5G, and every percentage point above that 90 does actually matter. It does mean quite a bit more battery power left to you at the end of the day. And look, it's not quite what I would have wanted, although more anecdotal testing suggests, yeah, look, 2 days is possible if you're a lighter user, as always. Depends on how you're using the phone. If you hammer it with games, yeah, you can have it flat within an hour or so. If you're really only pulling it out of your pocket once or twice a day, yeah, it'll last you through the day and into a second one without too much drama. For charging, we're talking USB-C, and you do get a charger in the box, although it's only a 10-watt charger, so it's not going to pump that 5,000 mAh battery up particularly quickly. So should you buy the G14? Well, look, I reckon Motorola's priced the G14 almost perfectly. If your budget can stretch to it, the Moto G53 5G is a much better phone, undeniably, while still playing in the budget waters, and I've certainly seen a few discounts on that of late. If your budget can't stretch to it, the G14 is definitely enough a phone for most everyday users, without being quite as slow as its Moto E13 sibling. And all of that means that $229, it's pretty good value, although it does have its own share of compromises. Anyway, that's my take on the Motorola Moto G14. Got any questions? Drop them in the comments below, and thanks for watching all the way through to the end.